I left NDAC's board meeting this morning and I left a foot of snow. And it was -17 a couple days ago. It's only 2.5 hour drive. You really are the heart of Ontario. Warm, you're all here, it's beating. It's so good to come. Okay. All right. If you can't hear me, I'm sure you'll put your hand up or just clap because, you know, that's always good for speakers to hear when people are cheering. Thank you. I have a close tie to Paris, Ontario. When I knew them as kids or young adults, and they were terrible then, there's a place down here on the Ninth River run by Chad Beachy and Danny Madden. I knew them as kids. They're now doing fabulously well. So through their email newsletter and my association with them, I have followed you guys closely. Now I want to be really clear. You know, I don't think, well, I know from matter of fact, none of us are here because of NIMBYism, and neither are we environmental radicals. We're here because rural Ontario communities, collectively, we just deserve a better law than the current Aggregate Resources Act. Communities deserve true parliamentary protection, which means that your MPP is out there looking out for you. People like you have built these very communities for a century. You and I, collectively, we just deserve more transparency and more accountability as part of this law, the Aggregate Resources Act. You'll hear lots about it. In the end, it is the act that governs the very issue that you're here about. So I will speak some about redneck humor or wisdom, the mega quarry, food and water first, and society's view of the Aggregate Resources Act review. And I warn you that my redneck humor and wisdom is just interspersed. I won't announce it, I'm just going to throw it out there. And if you're not laughing, you're sleeping, and then I'll get really upset. So stay awake, would you? Let me start with the mega quarry proposal. And where's my forward button? It told me everything but. Thank you, Liz. Mega quarry proposal. Doesn't really matter how it snuck up on us, but it snuck up on us. That's the one, thank you. These fabulous guys, and because it's all done now, I should almost have to thank Bess Klarman, the good-looking guy with the beard. He is the leader of the Baupost Hedge Fund in Boston, Massachusetts. Sorry if I butchered that. The shorter guy on the right is John Shearer. He was the agricultural representative. And the taller of the two in the smaller picture is Joseph Itzkohoff. And if you had any chance of watching Adrienne Arsenault's fabulous interview on CBC, The National, she asked Joseph a pertinent question. And it was the most telling 20 seconds of silence that it took for him to answer. Google it, it's a great 17-minute program. You see the outline of the proposed quarry? On a 15,000-acre plateau of some of Ontario's very best soil grows all the food, etc., that we all eat. The quarry's circumference was 40 kilometers. So if I head west from Paris, 40k, where would I be? A little louder would be good for me. Woodstock, you know, just think about that. And why I should be grateful, because it highlighted the weakness in Ontario's Aggregate Resources Act. Please don't ask me how. However, internal documents from the Baupost Fund revealed that they chose Melanchthon Township because it was the second smallest municipality in southern Ontario, 2,800 people strong. How many live in Paris? Oh, you're a metropolitan compared to us. But also the weakest regulatory environment governing Resource Extraction in Canada, our Aggregate Resources Act. No wonder that you are in a situation you're in. Bottom line, Aggregate Resources Act has to change. Water was a huge issue for us as it is for you. Matter of fact, just think about it. Bottom line, basic to everything. Clean water powers all of life. I don't care where you work or what you do. It powers the very human community. Oh, okay, I'm getting the hang of this here. And there you see a slide of how tall the water was going to flow or how deep. Whoever said that? How tall will water flow? Please don't quote me on this in your local paper. The mega quarry was supposed to be some 200 feet below the water table, which up there is only 20 feet below soil in most places. This was a proposal, some 600 million liters per day. I had no idea how much that was, but it's about what 2.7 million Ontarians use in a day. What a crazy, crazy thing to do. It brought to light that review timing, and these are all aggregate resources issues, a need study, as Craig already pointed out, and peer review are super critical. Now just think, we had 45 days to review an application that was 7 banker boxes, 3,100 pages. It took me twice that long to read it, never mind trying to comment on it. Peer review, is that too loud? Man. Peer review is a funny thing. Highland companies pay to retain over $100 to every peer review company in Ontario. So if you go look for one to ask a question, we can't comment. We have a conflict of interest. For $100. For $100. This is not okay. And, not to be overlooked, there's no accountability to a consulting report. So, I'm not an expert, I ride horses for a living. But any company who put that 600 million liter system together ended up, and this is really important, stating that they can pump this incredible amount of water every day in 2 recharge wells that were drilled around the perimeter of the quarry. Just think about it. It would have taken something like 600 wells. It would have taken 16 pumps running 45 million liters every day. Any engineer here will say, what? Every day. And then we would ask them the question, if you had an industrial spill and had to turn the pumps off for a couple of days, how would you ever catch up? Well, we can't. Because in 2 days there'd be 1.2 million liters, sorry, 1.2 billion liters more on the quarry floor. Yet they have no accountability. If this license would have gone ahead, who do you think would have been stuck with the cost of making it all work or fixing it? But your lowest tier municipality. And I'm really, really grateful that your councillors and mayors are here, because in the end, they are the ones who are looking out for your tax dollar, and they can help with some of this. You're going to see this do your part, lots. The cost to communities is really unbelievable. The review report would still allow today a mega quarry. And I'll come back to her again. I have no idea how our local MPP, PC, Sylvia Jones, sitting on the review committee, being in her writing, could sanction the review committee and send me a note saying, sorry you didn't like the outcome. What the hell? Now the good part is, David Ozurieti, who is the Minister of Natural Resources, was the chair of that standing committee. And this report has utterly failed us as the citizens of Toronto. However, if there's ever a minister who knows each and every detail of this Aggregate Resources Act, it will be him. And he will know each and every one of the details of the problems with it. So it is up to you and us to make sure that he doesn't forget that. Pending legislation has to change the Aggregate Resources Act. And if you look at the process, and I'm going to show you what we all did with the Niagara Quarry situation, is the public at large engaged in a terrific process of development, policy development. If any government at any level ever would want to have public input into policy development, this would have been the way to do it. And government needs to recognize it. You know, in many ways, you, community of Brent, and what we have to do in North Dufferin, we have to realize that the time, at every level of government, that the time to protect water is not some day, and the fight is not being fought by someone. The time is now to protect our water, and it is done by you, and it is done by us, and it is done by all of us. Bottom line. So I won't read that to you. Most of you should be able to read that. It's pretty self-explanatory. Policy needs to put people first. Source water protection, and I'm reading it here anyway, highest priority, and as Craig said, precautionary principle. You just cannot fool around with it. The licensing question here, everyone else has to upgrade their standards to modern times for licenses. So does Dufferin. Question is, do you people here, you're here on a Saturday afternoon, I sure appreciate that, but, not but, do you, the question is to you, do you have the passion and the motivation to stand up and be counted, to impress on Dufferin and OSCA, the Ontario Sandstone and Gravel Association, that a social license is required? If businesses want to work in your community, they need to work with that social license approval. And the citizens, concerned citizens of Brant as an organization have done a great job. First time I learned about them was about a year ago. And how far have you come? You have attracted great public speakers like Maud Barlow, got Craig to take out time from his busy schedule. They need your support, without doubt. You know, water. Current Aggregate Resources Act makes no mention of an environmental assessment for below the water table excavation. I get we don't need to rewrite all the rules all the time, because a lot of the rules got us into this very luxurious state that we're in. The however is, we have as a society understood farmland is more important than we ever thought it was. We understand water is really trumping it all. So environmental assessments, just mandatory when you get to water issues. And if it's below the water or the risk to water, who all knows about the Kingston Quarry 28 years ago? Google it. It's a case study for us. Pop up in the floor. Has ever anybody heard about that? So they had a quarry much proposal-wise, much like where you are at here. Houses all around. And a lot of commuting traffic. People get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, takes a shower. No water. Overnight, the floor had popped. They call it a pop-up in the trade. 6 inches wide, 12 inches high. In other words, the floor had buckled, and one side has raised. All the water got drained out of the neighborhood. Nobody could shower anymore. That's a risk. Remember the risk. I'll refer to it later. The outcome was Ministry of Environment was all over it in a reactionary way, while you have the chance to be precautionary. They ordered the company to supply water to all the subdivisions around, which the company did, and what do you think happened 3 months later? 3 months later, the company sued MOE for having failed to prove that it was the company's fault. This ain't okay. Precautionary principle should say, if you are in a residential area, if you're surrounded by, you just cannot be doing what they were doing. Precautionary principle in our case, farmland like that, That's a beautiful potato. No, I don't care. Now, I just see that as a potato. Other people have said other comments. Nor that should ever become that. So our issue has many similarities, and this is sort of a struggle for words for me because we're Dufferin, and I'm talking about the Dufferin application, but this is really your application. Our county is Dufferin. Our communities just have the right for better planning. Less strife. There isn't a day that doesn't go by when we don't get a call from some area within the province that is full of strife about development and aggregate applications. This is not okay. Government has to do better, and the only way we're going to get government to do better is if we, as a community and as voters, will make it count. The fight is not against aggregate in this case. It is just very much for doing it in a better way. Remember, Dufferin is doing what the current ARA allows a company to do. Yet, yes, companies have rights, but so do you, we as people, and we have the right not to be negatively impacted by the activities of others. Fundamental human right, and we are going to insist on it. And it's much like this ad. 3-year-old teacher needed for preschool. Experience preferred. Come on, this works. Let me walk you through some of the things that work for us in the migratory fight. And I'm never here to tell you what to do, maybe to serve as some of the inspiration to think outside the box. We have done all kinds of crazy things. That was a walk, run, bike-a-thon held around the mega quarry site. The message was very simple. Get people engaged, get masses of people engaged, and Craig referred to Soupstock with some 40,000 people coming in the city to celebrate food and water. Any which imaginative way you can get people to exercise, have some fun, and take a bit of awareness about the issue home is a good thing. That was a layout, various ways, all good. Donna Wells, God bless her, we never asked her to do anything. It came from expertise within the community. She took some pictures throughout Melanchthon Township, did it in a workshop where you can create your own books. Nobody here under the age of 16 who can help me with that. Anyway. And this book found its way into the Premier's office, found its way into the Prime Minister's office, Peter Kent, not the Prime Minister, but Environment Minister at the time, and certainly through our now good friends Greg and Matthew Kelly and Peggy Nash, and I'll mention them a little later for another reason. We paddled the Grand, so this was something student from Sophia Saniti from University of Waterloo just decided to hold an awareness raiser. And the key is we had all these fabulous creative ideas, not because we were brilliant, but from an organizational point of view, one of the key things is empower other people to do their thing as long as it supports their mission statement, your mission statement, to raise awareness. You don't have to control the message and you don't have to control the event. Let the creativity flow. There's such beautiful, beautiful, bright people out there. Right now we have a GPS tour running. People can do it on their own time. Drive around to see what this is all about, because the fight in North Dufferin is not done until the Aggregate Resources Act changes how the game is played. Now Danny B, Mohawk of the Turtle Clan, I'm so proud to call him my brother. Few have had more of an influence on my thinking than he has done. It's personal to me because everybody who is around agriculture understands to a large degree First Nations connection to nature and the protection of Mother Earth. It took me a long time to sort of truly understand what the Anishinaabe women say when they talk about water being the blood of Mother Earth. It just sort of doesn't connect easily, but it sure has connected now. Danny, I heard about him before I ever met him. He's just a really interesting guy, and he saved me from a whole lot of embarrassment. And true story, not proud to tell it, but it's sort of significant as to how we end up all where we are in life. I hadn't met him, and yet we were attending a same gathering. There was maybe 400 or 500 people in the room. I was leaning on one side, dressed just like this, and he was leaning on the other side, just dressed like Danny always does. And he swears to this day that the ancestors made us look at each other at the same moment. So I'm looking left, and he's looking right, and I'm thinking, a cowboy and an Indian, how the hell is this going to work? And he's thinking, an Indian and a white guy, how is this ever going to work? I'm so proud that I can call him my brother. He wrote me an email the other day. I was telling him I was off to Oklahoma, and he wrote me an email and he said, you know, brother, you're one hell of a savage. And for him to say that, that's likely the highest compliment I can get. Where he saved my life, or not my life, that's a little stretch, but where he saved me from a terrible mistake was, we met maybe 6 months after, and I gave him a hug, and I said, hey brother, how is it doing? How are you doing? Love and respect to your family. And are you ready to fight the mega quarry? And he gently pushed me back, and he looked at me. He says, brother, I'm not here to fight the mega quarry. And the first thought, as shallow a human being as I am, to me was, who the hell bought you off? Terrible, huh? But it just came. And where he saved me is, he saw the look in my face, and he never made me ask the question. But he smiled and he said, brother, I'm here to fight for our clean local food, for our air, and for our water. And how can you not support that kind of an attitude? So, message. What made it so fundamental to me is that from fighting a mega quarry to turning my headspace around to a pro-message. And in my way of thinking, I wish for you that you will become the brand citizens for a healthy community. It's way easier to get out of bed when you know you're fighting for something that is just fundamentally right. So our ask of government is very simple. And it might not be the holy grail of all the things we want out of the Aggregate Resources Act or the Provincial Policy Statement, but it's absolutely a doable ask. And there's a message in here, and I had to chat with a couple of people beforehand. When you ask government to do something, ask them something that they can do. It's really fundamental. For us to go to government and say, stop the mega quarry was an unreasonable request because the current legislation allowed the application. But we did ask the government, with our location, that if I, living on the other side of the concession road, want to build a single-family dwelling and need a full environmental assessment, would it not be reasonable that a quarry application of 2,300 acres, managing almost the water for 3 million people, should have an environmental assessment? Yeah. And that question could be met with a resounding yes, and I'll tell you a little later, Jim Bradley, the bottom line is the government did order an environmental assessment first time ever in the history of Ontario. So if you ever think you're running up against something that doesn't make or hasn't been done before and it's discouraging, think again. So we have to have a little fun, and when you look back, it all looks so fabulously successful. Being ahead of that particular date of Food Star was a terrifying human experience, and I so wish it upon all of you. When Michael Stettlander, he's a boss of the Canadian Chefs Congress, Google them. That's all the help I'm going to give you. When I toured him around, there are all kinds of YouTube videos out, so you can do some fun research. Bottom line is, we parted company and said, well, let's have dinner for some people from the city out here. And I said, sure. You know, we had dinners before, 30, 40 people. However, we had great support from a variety of musicians, and I got to tell you this story. Just got to laugh about it, but you know, what good, positive public relation can do. So we had, in this case, Sarah Harmer's there. We had a system set up where cars were everywhere. Like, don't kid yourself, it ended up the last folks parked 4 kilometers from the farm venue site in Guam. Wow. It was a bring your own plate and fork event. After 28,000 people, we picked 3 bags of garbage. Wow. Unbelievable. So another volunteer, Kim, was working behind me on the laneway. 124 is our regional road. Go left to right, cars were everywhere. There had to be 2,000 cars parked on the road already by the time the OPP cruiser from another area came by and said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm the guy in charge." I said, "Have these cars towed." Okay, we have 2 tow trucks in Sheldon, you know. He was clearly from out of town. But the system we had set up, almost every car wanted to come into the laneway, and only musicians and special personnel were allowed to go on down to the farmstead itself. The others would turn around behind me and join traffic. So I see this blue van coming up, signal light turned on, clearly coming in. I look, I know who it is, and I wave them in. Make eye contact with Kim, they're okay to go. I get busy here, a minute later I turn around and here is Kim. All I see is her butt and legs sticking out the driver's side window. Yeah, that was my reaction. And then got busy, turned back to see how she was doing. She was counting the money. And we were stressed and busy. I said, "Kim, what the hell are you doing?" And she pointed right at me and said, "Well, you waved them in," as if it was my fault. I said, "Yes, I did. Do you know who they were?" "No, but they had to pay." Members of the Bare Naked Ladies. Now, in the spirit of Woodstock, you just got to understand this. These guys travel and detained for free and had to pay to get in. Yeah. Michael Stettlander, you know, if anybody can pull something together, it sure is him. We're forever grateful to how they operated. The people were just unbelievable. It was a nasty day. The sun shone just long enough in the morning to get folks motivated. It was just an unbelievable event. Largest food protest ever in Canada that we know of until the year after, when we came to Craig's neighborhood and he helped to mobilize 40,000 people. Great story. Now we had some fun, for sure. There's the event that Matthew and Craig helped so much with. And this group of people, it's the only picture I have from Food Stock, or Soup Stock, they meet normally in a karaoke bar. There's 45 of them, and I forget the YouTube link, but it is just hilarious. The instructor, you can't see him on the picture, or the guy who sort of tells everybody what to do in the choir. These guys wrote 3 songs for the event. And he was so excited. He was maybe 4'6", but he looked 7 feet tall on the stage. He was just so into the performance of his people. And when you listen to it, unbelievable. So my question to you and the citizens here is there a food stock in your future? Think about it. Is there a food stock in your future? Now if you see an ad for dogs that reads, "Great Danes for sale," you must be in redneck country. You're the only one who gets these jokes. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, I'm way over time, I see. So, creating an event takes a lot of passion. Living your values is what your community is all about. That sounds sort of like God bless America kind of statement, but if you really think about it, you got to know why you, your families, your kids, your grandkids, and your grandparents, why they're all here. If you have values and pride in your community, it sure as hell is worth standing up for. Rick Hansen attended a presentation of his, you all know him, Man in Motion Tour. He said there was this time when to do the next push on the wheelchair, just the very next step, seemed to be the absolute hardest one to do. But after that one, there was the next one, and there was the next one. And 40,000 kilometers later, the rest is history. So a question I have for all of you is pretty simple to me. Are you as a community ready not to be that cliche, the little guy can never win? Little guy will always lose. Are you ready not to be steeped in this thing that you're defeated before you get going because the other side is big business? The Baupost hedge fund was the 7th largest hedge fund in the world. Please take some inspiration from the fact that we are no different up there as a community. We are your neighbors, your brothers, and your sisters. If we can do this, you can do it. Just don't wait for someone else to do it for you. So do your part. So part of this is, some more concrete stuff. Some questions to ask as part of this process. And you should insist on high quality answers, be it from your local council, and I tell you this, don't fight with your local council. These guys are really, guys isn't meant to be sexist. God, I gotta learn to be so careful. These men and women who run for office are totally overloaded. They sit on a million committees, and it is not nearly everything they think about is your issue. However, it is up to you to engage them and help them by asking the right questions. I wholeheartedly believe that the vast majority of politicians from all levels of government, as well as the policy makers that support them, they get out of bed in the morning, they truly want to do the right thing. They don't get out of bed in the morning and say, okay, who can I piss off today? And I have some great examples in my own experience from Craig and Joda Shrine, from Laurie Holloway, who ran as a Liberal candidate, from PC Federal MP Michael Chong and David Tilson. They were Matthew Kelvin, powerhouse behind helping to create awareness. Peggy Nash, Mike Schreiner from the Ontario Green Party. I have a list likely as long as Marmor people that I have just a ton of respect for, because this is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue and a community issue. This is looking for politicians to help do the right thing. So let us change the conversation a little, and I want to offer you some suggestions, hardcore suggestions. Engaged public you get. You need to be engaged in the process, otherwise the process cannot work for you. I am on slide 32, good. Your local councils are the ones who are looking after your tax dollars, and they are the ones responsible to you, so give them a chance. Ask them to help for healthy air and your water. And protect the way of life that you guys have all invested in. Access to healthy local food, Council already mentioned that. Protect farmland. Official plan engagement is necessary. And help for pushing changes to the Agri Resources Act. You can do that if you don't know already through NDAC's website. NDAC.com has a letter. We're asking you to help because it's a people's game. Let's play it that way. This is not against business. We need business to support our way of life. But here's the thing. My wife, when she says it, here's the thing. Boy, I pay attention. So, here's the thing. It cannot, business prosperity cannot come at the cost of everything else. The holy grail of maximizing shareholder return can just not come at the expense of our water or our very future. Not okay. So Participation is vital, and you need to do this as a group, as Craig already pointed out. And you should copy, involve, invite all those affected by this issue. Now in the process, not just at the very last end. So when decisions are being made, they are very well aware. That goes from M&R, MPs already here, bring them into the process now. Fundamental right. Maybe the United Nations doesn't respect that yet, or doesn't recognize that yet, but we sure do. We sure know it. And there's a theme building here, and for those of you, I want you really please to pay attention next 5 minutes. You have the right not to have to hire a lawyer to protect your wealth. Think back on Kingston. When the floor popped and everybody was out of water the next day, why would it take 20 years and $15 million of private legal money trying to get justification and reimbursement for the cost only to have the candidate declare bankruptcy? This is fundamentally wrong, and you're staring it right in the face, and your counsel can help with that. Peer studies of water is really difficult. In our area, we're sitting on limestone, that's what they were after, karst. And David Vanderzeg, member of NDAC's board, said he could drill a well where the only lady who gets my redneck jokes sits. And you'd get 30 gallons a minute, and then can drill a well where I am and get 300 gallons a minute. Peer studies on water hydrology are extremely critical. You should ask, and council should ask, of the proponent to have an emergency plan. Self-explanatory. You can't prove anything unless you have a good baseline study, and this holds true for you guys and everyone else. The water wells should all be monitored long before any permission is finally granted, if any. And there are conditions. Just to say you'll fix it doesn't matter. What matters is that the minute the irregularities in the flow operations will have to cease. And just pay attention to the last one. Third-party insurance. In favor of your municipality, because you're going to phone your councillor when your well runs dry, aren't you? Yeah. So that is where your municipality comes in. To cover water claims within whatever radius you have for your well pits. We learned this from the Kingston Court. And here's a precedent that I'm aware of, and since I've been doing this, people tell me there are other ways to do it. For other precedents. The Council of Premiers and Territorial Leaders this past summer went to the federal government, which is the jurisdiction in charge of trains, and asked the federal government to ensure that train operators have adequate third-party insurance for their businesses. So if they can do it, your council can ask the proponent or the provincial government, because Lac Mégantic serves as a terrible example. Small communities now looking at the cost of, do you guys know how much money it takes to clean that up? Never mind the human loss. The Quebec federal government, taxpayers, on the hook for some $200 million, am I right?
At least.
At least. This is not okay. This is not how we're going to do business in 2013. Middle ages have left. So if your proponent is that confident, then ask them to insist on third-party insurance, just think about it, to cover in favor of your municipality, because they are the ones who have to fix the problem, which includes roads and all the other sort of things. There's just a whole topic just on, or a whole story just on that topic. ARA needs to be updated in a serious way. And here's the other part of always these arguments. The Ontario Sandstone and Gravel Association, led by Maureen Miller, bright, intelligent person. They missed a huge opportunity in my assessment. For those of you who read the Aggregate Resources Act, the committee actually thanks them by name for helping to create this terrible document. Go figure. Ed Cruz, Mayor of Shelburne, is on record, public record, so I'm not making this up, that 75% of municipal election campaigns are funded by aggregate and development. I leave that out to you. Wow. OSCA had a huge opportunity to do the right thing in this report, but they did. And Dufferin could indeed be the hero here. Funny how you can turn the villain into a hero. They just got to do the right thing. It's simple. And ask people, if you look at the political map, Toronto is mainly red, right? One blue seat. Rural Ontario is split between blue and orange. Yet the all-party standing committee, there was not one dissenting vote. This is not okay, including our own MVP, Sylvia Jones. How can she not stand up for us? Am I going to remember that? I'm going to remember that. So the question you can ask out there, who or which political party, and this is where it comes down to it, is protecting rural Ontario? Food and Water First is not making your issue its issue. However, it'll always be your issue. But we can help you elevate it to decision makers and policy makers. We can help it by raising awareness. By supporting, for you guys, Food and Water First, you can align your ask with our ask. And the key here is we'll bring at least 8 ridings into the next election that are directly involved with these asks. And we're in a position, through organizations like CCOB, and all of you here, to ask at these meetings the right questions, and to hold those elected accountable for the answers. It's democracy at its very, very best, reflecting solutions-oriented public engagement. I must have missed on, because solutions-oriented pricks my brain. There's no use just to complain. Mega quarry battle is no different in that sense. But what I want you to think about is, why don't you offer a solution to either Dufferin or the help of the provincial government, whoever is listening to you, and say, this is not the place to do what you're supposed to be doing. Let's do a land swap. Let the province look at its inventory map and say to Dufferin, well, we're not going to support your cause here, but we can support it someplace else. So please, make logging on and promoting the pledge part of your conversation. Help us drive positive change. Politicians, decision makers, policy makers, they all watch this thing closely. When you look at our partners page, and Craig reflected upon it, it is non-partisan. We have Bay Street firms to small towns. The Township of Melancton, your local council, our local council. To the largest city in the country, Toronto passed unanimously to be a Food and Water First city and lobby the provincial government to protect farmland and source water regions, aquifers here, Guelph, everywhere. That's all part of it. The first county, or in our case, upper tier government, Dufferin County, joined last meeting. To businesses that earn the living of agriculture, to the OFA and the DSFA, David Suzuki Foundation. Generally not guys who are playing on the same page, but they sure do here. To the Green Party and the federal Liberal chapter of our region. Questions being asked everywhere. Which provincial party, and you need to ask that of your people, which provincial party will step up and look after your interests? That remains to be seen. The opportunity for real parliamentary leadership is certainly there. So in closing, I'd like to refer you to this story. When I had the honor of meeting Minister Bradley, we were briefed. When we set the meeting up, I really felt like I was treated like a hick from the country. So the guys, the people we were talking to said, okay, you get 20 minutes. Okay. Don't talk to him. Well, why the hell am I going there if I can't talk to him? You talk to us. Okay. Don't ask him a direct question. He will not respond. And when he gets up, that means it's time to go. That's tight, eh? So we walk into his office. He had a really nice guy. He had all kinds of senior policy advisors around. And we talked to him, he talked to us, and you could see the people who were instructing us. What the hell is going on? He's talking to them, he's looking at them, this is not okay. 55 minutes later, he got up, shook my hand, and gave me this look, and he said, well, young man, you did okay. Thank you, sir. And then his eyes changed, and the look in his eyes, and he said, don't you ever overlook the 700 emails I got in the last 48 hours asking me to pay attention to. So if there is power in the people, it is not the presentation, but it is a public engagement behind it. So that's where it sits. Thank you very much.